Hi everyone, welcome. I'm curator at October Gallery. My name's Eleri. A very warm welcome on a Saturday morning. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm really excited that I have two wonderful artists from our Emergent Energies exhibition, Theresa Weber and Matheus Marques Abu, beside me in conversation for the next 45 minutes to an hour. And then there will be questions at the end, so please do think about what questions you want to ask these new amazing artists. So Theresa lives and works between London and Germany. She's a graduate and alumni at the RCA Sculpture Department. And Matheus has wonderfully joined us all the way from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. We met at Abu Dhabi Art Fair last year, and I was really encaptured by his paintings. And thank you so much, Carla Rosario, for also being here with us this morning. So let's start with Matheus, and just to kind of get a feel for where you've come from, and what do you think first led you to becoming an artist?
Hello everyone, thank you for coming, and thank you Eleri to invite me to participate of the great exhibition. It's a really great pleasure to be here. So this is a little hard question because my first aspiration become from the music so my friends made a rap music in Brazil, so I stay more close the music for the visual artists in the beginning, and I think this part of my life was a bridge to to start thinking about paintings, because after the concert of the shows I met artists, curators who invite me to come and visit the exhibitions. I started creating this knowledge about paintings and visual artists.
Nice. And am I right that you actually made album artwork,
Yes.
covers as well?
Sure. When I was a teenager, one really close friend of mine, Ababi Bikila, he's invited me to create these covers of the albums and the singles. We have a new other project, like the first ones to make it, maybe in the final of this year, but yeah, create. Now it's different because when I started, just I made the drums, and yeah, now the drums transformed into paintings.
Sure. And how would you describe your artistic practice or process? So for everyone here, Matheus's works are these three large canvases at the back. Do you start with drawings? Do you start with kind of research? What's the process behind creating your works?
So behind this paints, I have many studies about other writers or political peoples were making something in Brazil, or think about how we can decolonization, like ideas or other inspiration about the past in the present, and my process going to this way, and I don't know. I really think about how we can create a new epistemology in Brazil, because we now have a epistemology formed very well about black peoples in Brazil. Everything is so cut in the, how can I say that, some part of the history was passed whereas I don't know, everything, many archives about the history was cleaned up, I don't know. And yeah, we needed to create new ideas, new form to thinking and living, and yeah, this is one aspiration of my work.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, like creating an archive for Afro-Brazilian life and culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Life. Yeah. Life.
Nice. And connecting to that, what are the kind of key themes explored in your work? You kind of touched on then these ideas of Afro-Brazilian history, particularly the kind of the movement of people from West Africa and from Africa to Brazil. so the transatlantic slave trade. Whether you wanted to kind of unpack that.
Oh yeah, this is like one of the nucleus of my work, because all these paintings is about journeys across the oceans between Africa, Europe, Brazil, and I want like to think about this journey of in other points, in so try to connect me with the peoples in the situation of slavery, and how these people pass by this alive, living in Brazil, more than million peoples, and create the families after the terrible moment. So I try to connect with the subject things, maybe these people alive, maybe the faith of your ancestors, or the religion parts of the culture, the symbols arrived in Brazil and would form other culture, like the religion of Matriz Africana, like Candomblé, Umbanda, and yeah, I searching for this
connection of these histories. Nice. Nice. Well, we'll unpack each work kind of in more detail. Gonna move between you both and onto Theresa. So similar question, what do you think led you to become an artist? What kind of started off your practice?
Yes, so from my side as well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure being part of this show. For me, I think growing up in Düsseldorf, Germany, I was very lucky that there's a big Kunst Academy, like an academy for arts, and my parents took us to the Work in Progress show every year. So I kind of grew up knowing that it's possible to be an artist, like this could be an option, because ever since I remember, I've always painted and like made material collages, and wanted to be an artist. I think one phase in kindergarten, I wanted to be an astronaut, but then my mom said that it's very dangerous, so you could die, and then I wanted to be an artist. And so yeah, I think I was 8 when I said to my mom that I want to study at the academy one day, which then I did, like after graduating high school. I went there to study with Katharina Grosse for 3 years and Ellen Gallagher for 3 years. And yeah, I never really had another idea. I kind of feel like I needed to locate myself, and yeah, the practice is like very intertwined with life for me.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's
very
how it came
intuitive,
together.
just to become, and also being, I guess, being surrounded by an art kind of network as well.
Yeah, exactly. And like also, I feel like I come from a creative family, even though I'm the first one to really like be a visual artist, because my parents like didn't have the opportunity to do that, but they wanted to give my generation the freedom, and kind of supported that as well. So yeah.
Nice. And so for everyone here, Theresa's work is the one behind us, the hanging sculpture just over there, and a large piece in the next room as well. So how would you describe your artistic practice and process? Your work is very richly material-led. I love the detail in your work, and interested to know how you kind of first came across using all these materials.
Yeah, so I've always intuitively used so many different types of materials, and it's a multi-disciplinary practice. Oftentimes depends on the context and the project, but I have these different bodies of works. I have the wall pieces, which I call sculptural paintings or relief paintings. I also call them categorisations, or like cosmology paintings. And then I have the fabric pieces that started out with the costume pieces. So as this one in the show, for instance, which then became like more abstract, large-scale architectural fabric pieces, such as the one I showed at Somerset House last year for the commission. And then I also make resin pieces, which is like an archiving technique for me to pull in like materials and research in prints. and collaborative performances at times where costume is included, sound is included. I often collaborate with the sound artist called Nathanael Amadou Klipan, also based in London. He's amazing, also an Afro-German artist. So it's pretty fluid. I'm trying to have like a resilient practice in terms of that I keep surprising myself, or that I really like am not fixed to one media.
And when, like, was it on your BA course or in your kind of studies after that you found this kind of technique of the silicone in particular? Because I feel like I've never seen someone use this style before, and the way you imprint your fingers and inlay materials. When did you first find silicone, I guess?
Yeah, so I think that was in Düsseldorf, like studying there using the plastic workshops. And I kind of found out that there's this building silicone that can be modeled onto the surface, and that there's more than just the liquid silicone. And I started to build up these paintings like architectures and like model different materials. And then also the fact that it allowed me to implant collected objects, because I really am interested in not just body traces and like jewelry elements and costume elements, but also just archiving collected elements of personal value, like shells and pearls and just things from the worldly that have this nostalgic aspect, and that are about, like very often are about like displacement or like missing something or like feeling isolated, but then I want to archive it like a memory. So yeah, I think it was maybe 2018 when I started with the silicone, and then implanted my finger imprint and started to implant these jewelry element and acrylic nails.
And I guess that kind of, well, connects to what the key themes in your work, like exploring this idea of identity and your Afro-German heritage. Unpack kind of some of the key motifs, I guess. And I remember you saying that you're influenced by the kind of Caribbean writing and things like this as well. So if you want to touch on a bit of your research maybe around your works.
So for many years, I've kind of just intuitively made these material collages without really knowing what type of history in like, even in specifically like art history, there is connected to that. And then Ellen Gallagher came to the Kunstakademie Düsseldorf, and we did a lot of writing with reading and like discussing philosophies with the class. And I started to read more like towards Caribbean discourse, and was really inspired by Edouard Glissant, for instance. His idea of like individuality and diasporic lives and creolization in the terms of we always have to reinvent ourselves. Like you can be something completely new, but also be just as connected to other places and your ancestry, even though you are very, very different. And his idea of the rhizome, like the dynamic root network that's like flat and dynamic. It's not fixed to territory, but and that's what makes it resilient. It's basically the opposite of the deep single root that enabled the idea of blood and territory, like throughout colonial imperialism.
Right.
So, and that's also why I make these like rhizomic shapes in the costumes and in the fabric pieces and the relief paintings, trying to visualize this concept of deterritorialization and like body mapping, fictive cartographies, and like fluid landscapes that kind of resist the grid, as in like the grid as the colonial landscape or urban structure, man-made structure, and it's to be broken up with organic shapes.
Nice.
So yeah, that's like one example, but yeah, basically like the Edouard Glissant example of how I'm trying to visualize that, because he also uses nature symbols a lot, and I'm trying to do that as well.
Yeah, your work
like
feels very like
poetic.
organic and poetic. Nice. And I think that's interesting, although yours and Matheus's work are visually very different mediums, but this kind of decolonial thinking or looking at ancestry and how that influence your work and practice is a kind of nice touch point or similarity in both your works. So on to Matheus, if you could talk us through some of the works in more detail in the exhibition. So whether you wanted to kind of unpack some of the titles and some of the visual motifs in the work as well.
Sure. For this exhibition, I think is the central theme of my work, but using different colors, different movements or perspectives to speaking about. So my work's coming from the idea of a dream. It's like a oniric ideas, and when I put these guys like a floating or ideas like to swim or jumping in the ocean, I want to say something like to create one liberty, one freedom, the figures like suspended at times, and when I use the Amazonic plants or tree, I want this coding this to
your incorporation of plants. So in this one we have the banana leaves, and in one of your other ones kind of like these purple botanical paintings. Mm-hmm. So where do the kind of incorporation of the plants in your works stem from?
Yeah, so the plants, I think more about the colors, how I can use the colors to create an idea of divine things, or the green use it for stay close more sophisticated ideas. And the symbols I integrate in my painting because it came from the first research I have about symbols. Symbols are found in the gates, in the windows, in the central history in Brazil. The ports and receive these guys in situation of slavery in this other centuries. The identical symbols are used to communicate about the past, about the present, the future, how these things still communicate something, you know. And like I have a writer, I really like the Saidia Hartman. She say like the past never pass, and even in the past, so these ideas continue in the present. And I use this to communicate ideas. So we need to come back to the past, but take this knowledge, take these intelligence ideas, the technology, to create new futures, to create other visuality orders,
Nice. Yeah, so Matheus is kind of pointing out these kind of swirling metal paintings. This symbol is an Adinkra symbol from West Africa, based on called the Sankofa, which means to go back and collect or go back and pick up. Mm-hmm. So this idea of learning from the past in order to build a new future, which I think is also, it's more commonly known as or commonly seen as a bird that's kind of looking forward but also looking backwards at the same time, which influences the birds in your paintings as well. So these are herons, is that right?
Oh yes, I use these herons to think about one idea of a territory, because these herons stay really close to the ports, to the ocean areas, close to the seas, but in the same time it's really close the rivers in favelas in Rio. This part where I have majority people is black families, black communities, and I use this to create this metaphor of the territory, the same thing. But I think the heron is this bird is so elegant, and I don't know, he's communicates an idea of the liberty, the freedom, and I can use these whites to create a contrast in the paintings. So I use this to, yeah.
Yeah,
create
very
a
much
project.
together. The figures with the birds, it really gives the sense of you're diving with them, whether that's
Yes, of
diving into an ocean or
flighting,
flight or
or just
freedom.
stay in this suspended time. Yeah.
And particularly with the middle work over there, you get more of a sense of maybe like a surrealist. I think this like potentiality maybe in your work of imagining a new future, and also through a slight surrealist lens. We kind of feel like we've got the ocean in the bottom, but then it's also the figures are still floating in the sky. And you said something about Baroque to me before
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
sure. Yeah, I think this piece have distinct realist, the Baroque, because in this particular paint I take every science element and try to use this together, like the Amazonic trees, but it's not Amazonic at the same time. I think the bananeira arrives in Brazil with this route across the oceans. The bananeira was using to
Like subsistence.
to eat it.
Yeah.
Everyone plants these trees around the house because he give the fruit like a banana
Yeah.
to create food and other things sweetened.
Yeah.
And
So not only this movement of
it's the
people,
way
but movement of
to
nature.
think about these things arriving in Brazil in the night, but in the different way. I don't know, maybe floating. Well, it was not floating, but like this idea arrived, in this night. And have many projects there.
Yeah. And how long do you kind of usually spend on a work? I think it's always interesting, maybe for aspiring artists to. And you also make works that are multiple canvases kind of put together. We don't have one on display right now, but whether you kind of paint multiple works at once or explore different textures in one first and then move on. Just a bit more about your kind of process.
Yes, try to paint in different medias is idea I have all in my first painting. When I try to painting in the glass, in the windows I collect in some streets in Brazil, in some house, and so I pass. Now I try to stay more time in one paint, like 3 weeks, 1 month, 3 months sometimes. Before I think about I need a painting very fast and one day one painting, but now I stay holding these paintings for more times because to create more details, see how these shadows and lights can create other visuality in the parts of in canvas, how the colors is communicating with each others, and yes.
Yeah, because in some of your earlier works, as you just said, so you were painting on windows that you just found on the street, and so I think that's a nice way of, and primarily kind of portraits of people maybe you've seen around, and painting on a glass, or you can kind of see yourself maybe slightly reflected.
Oh yes, to create a shadow.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, I found these windows because in Brazil some parts is passed to the process of gentrification to create new buildings like malls, I don't know, and I collect these windows to, I don't know, try to think what this window participates in this somewhere, because many of the windows come from the old house, so I think, I don't know, what this window see or participation, the story of these families in this house before, so see this house pass to one demolition.
So how kind of that's these objects in the community have seen such change and therefore like have this, I guess, energy about them that then you kind of painting on it creates a dialogue between the two.
Yes.
Nice. And great, over to Theresa. If you could talk us through some of your works in the show. So we have the woven bodies in the corner and then the work behind us.
Yes, sure. So I think I'm going to start with the woven bodies, which I actually started to make in London when I started to study at the RCA, and then I had a lot less space. And I was confronted with like my own body rather than like a big space, like in a smaller space. And so I lived in Kennington. I always went to the street market and started to buy my clothes at different places. And then I like cords, so I often buy like 2 pieces, like cords. And then one day I kind of brought my clothes into the studio and started to kind of cut them open and extend them with more fabric. That's one of the first ones, and kind of weave into it and clip objects in, like, or take them back out. And then, so it's a series of 12 now. The woven bodies basically represent the body as a network, or like the body as unfixed entity that's like infinitely transforming. It's a body extension as well, like it's like almost adding like tentacles to the body, or like this rhizomatic root network that I've talked about before. So yeah, kind of making it porous and open, like, and negotiating the body, because in general, like in my practice, I think it's about breaking up categories of categorizations, because my experience is that I don't fit into a category, and I feel like dualisms are very like a violent system, so I'm trying to like resist that. And then
I was just going to say, and this I guess the potentiality of your sculptural works is they have that feeling that they can kind of go on with the way you can fasten more and more pieces to them. I think lends, as you're interested in performance, it also lends that work a potentiality to continue to be added on to, which I think is a really interesting concept. And then this idea of like the elasticity or flexibility of identity is shown through that as well.
Exactly. So yeah, I can always add things in. Sometimes I take things out. Is with the fabric with the big scale fabric installations is the same thing. They always transform, like in every space. Also connected to an experience of like feeling like I'm a different person in every space, or like in every context. So it's very directly about like body feelings and the body. And then the wall pieces, which I call these, so this series I call cosmology paintings, is very much about the body too, because the dimension is directly related to my body scale. It's 160 and always 2 meters. It's a series that I make since 2021, always like the same dimensions. So it's mapping out my body in a way, like in a symmetrical way that's not always really like symmetrical, but there's the center and then there's this gesture of the space that I can reach, and that's why it then becomes a body map. It maps out body feelings, or like visualizes energies and vibrations. And with the cosmology series, all of these paintings have a black background. Again, like thinking about infinity and circular time, and thinking about darkness as the source of all life, like, because we all come from the deep sea, and then also thinking about infinity of the cosmos and the universe, which is like, I'm not the first person to like think that, but I'm also kind of referring to other artists who think of it that way. So, and
what you said then about circular time is the kind of the reference to against linear time. So circular time, you can take over for me.
Yeah, so that's again like connected maybe to the idea of breaking up the grid as man-made structure or like this Western system of like cartography. And so like looking at time in a circular way, or like trying to depict circular time and trying to depict which something that maybe you could describe as simultaneous like levels, like past, present, future at the same time, would also be including a lot more histories, like, and opposes like the way we've learned history, or like the linear way to look at history. So like kind of opposing the line throughout the circle.
Yeah. And I guess to kind of unpack your interest in history and cosmology a little bit further, you also kind of inlay with collages. I remember in some of your other works kind of using mythological figures or things like this, and then there's a mask that's inlaid in the work in the second room. Whether you wanted to say a bit about that?
Yes, so that's related to the resin pieces that I make, which are like an archiving technique. I feel like the paintings give me a chance to create mind maps where I can include my research and different topics, like basically anything I want to include that doesn't have to do anything to do with each other, but I can bring it into one painting. So the one in that room has a self-portrait in it. It's usually print. So like the way I bring research in directly is like through print and then a layer of resin. And I feel like the layer of resin kind of protects the image, almost like a fluid vitrine, but like in an organic protection of it. So the self-portrait in the other painting looks mask-like because it was an image of my face that I transformed with an Instagram filter, which is something very contemporary, but it made it look mask-like in terms of like big eyes and like several mouths, and then I attached the motif to a line, and then it becomes this like infinite timeline. Like the horizontal is always like the horizontal in the paintings. I don't have a print in this painting because this one I felt like I just wanted to be purely about visualizing energies for the Emergent Energies. This is a new painting, and focus on my finger imprint in the silicone, which is like a body trace basically that archives my unique personal information, and then I implant acrylic nails and jewelry elements and beads that basically are connected to the collective and like collective identity. But like going back to the mythologies, I'm gonna have my first museum solo opening next week in Germany, and it's currently being installed. And that's, for instance, something where I include very direct references to different mythologies. There's 4 goddesses reappearing in the show, and there are 4 goddesses from different mythologies and different times, and they're all basically representing the same characteristics. They're all female goddesses of fertility, femininity, beauty, but also goddesses of destruction, anger, and war, and then also rebirth, and mostly like punishment of arrogance. So it's about like justice in a way, and the circle of life. So there's Kali, the Hindu goddess, Olokun, the Benin goddess, Nemesis, the Greek goddess, and Ishtar, the Mesopotamian goddess, as a motif that reappear. And then I also use these like mind map platforms to refer to historical events. There is an image of the Haiti Revolution, in direct reference to the French Revolution, which was successful like 1 year after the Haiti Revolution, which is like a very direct historical link between like Caribbean history, or like, let's say, international history. Basically talking about the first democracy in the world, which was Haiti, and then that democracy wasn't invented in Europe. And another motif that keeps reappearing in my works is Ludwig van Beethoven's death mask, because of the idea that Beethoven had a biracial background, It's about like hidden Afro-German history. It's about white passing. So maybe he was white passing. Maybe he was whitewashed in the way he was depicted in historical paintings. So yeah, it's death mask kind of is always woven into that. And then there was a performance that's connected to the Beethoven as well, which I showed at South London Gallery in 2023 with the New Contemporaries, and in Germany with Nathanael, the sound artist.
Nice.
And there's more. So yeah, basically a few examples.
No, it's really interesting. So I think, what's so detailed about your work is this dialogue between histories, these histories and how they're archived, and then also that dialogue or that paralleled with your kind of personal history and this idea of personal trace. I think I'm a massive fan of performance art as well, so it's also although you pursue the performance art in and unto itself, I find your work's also very performative in the sense of this idea of trace. So Rebecca Snyder, one of the kind of art historians on performance art, she says absent flesh does ghost bones. So if you think of a bone, what does it make you think of? It makes you think of a body. So I think in the same way, when people maybe see the fingerprints in your work, they think of who made that, where does that lead us to? Does it lead us to the artist, and who are they, and what are they trying to express? It's just something that I've been reflecting on your work, and it's an element that I really like. And then also with that, or this idea that you just touched on of kind of the feminine and your use of acrylic nails, because I think a lot of people don't realize initially when you see Theresa's works, and then you come up close and then you see the acrylic nails all lined up next to each other, just whether you wanted to kind of say a bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So like the acrylic nails are right next to mosaic stones, for instance, and then they become part of the architecture, just like little bricks, and become something like very solid and stable. It's basically about strength within feminine attributes. It's about like the different layers of meaning of these intersectional body marks in a way, because they mean something in different places. So from experience in Germany, people wouldn't consider long nails as feminist, whereas my experience, it was that in Jamaica, for instance, where I have family, it's very empowering. It's like prestigious, and also distances you from like physical labor, and you can afford to like take care of yourself.
Right.
And I really also just enjoy to have my nails done.
Yeah.
And then and it kind of becomes a body trace, just like a brushstroke at some point in painting. Like the brushstroke would be a body trace, and then I consider the nails and the finger imprints like just as much as a body trace, but it's loaded, so it's already bringing in history, like experience, and I feel like this is something where everyone would look at it, and if you recognize it, have your own connotations with it. So hopefully like something universal.
And I guess with the kind of archival history, and then using the nails again, it's this kind of past and present, or thinking about kind of the contemporary with the past as well. And how long do you spend on a work, or like do you kind of work on multiple pieces at once?
I usually work on multiple pieces at once. The best case scenario though would be to focus on one. It really depends on the deadline. So the best case scenario would be to have 2 weeks for a painting like this, but I mostly make them in 1 week.
Sure.
So it really depends on what I work on.
Yeah, because obviously you do works from this size to Theresa's done massive installations as well. So obviously that's a lot more time.
Yeah. So with the very big fabric pieces, the one for Somerset House, I did the Somerset House, the Morgan Stanley Commission at Somerset House last year. That piece was 13 meters, so that's the largest piece I've made. I think we had 1.5 months production, but I had assistance. So with the fabric pieces, it's really nice because it's the same gesture that's being repeated, like knotting, cutting fabric, braiding the fabric, filling in the fabric and making these bubbles, and it's a nice experience to have, and to have it like a communal act, to do it together. Like that piece, for instance, I made with my sister.
Nice.
Right now, the fabric pieces that I made for the museum solo, I made with an assistant who I feel very like connected to, almost feels like a sister.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it just makes sense for the concept to not make it alone.
Yeah.
But then like the paintings, I kind of have to make them alone.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Sorry, I just was thinking then about obviously your woven works, and with the acrylic nails, it's a kind of direct reference across the two of this kind of body extension as well. So just wanted to highlight that as a extra connection. And Matheus, back to you. I want you to give us maybe a feel for what the art scene is like in Rio, and do you have other artists you collaborate with? Or you, take us through the kind of, transport us to Brazil, if you will.
Now in Brazil, I think in Rio, where I live, I think the scene of art is really good, because now I have a really great artists in different movements like painting, like sculptures. I've met some guys made like a collage, modernist collage, like thinking about the architectures, the space. So my friends I can collaborate more is the guys made music, not the other visual artists, because I don't know, I have one approach really nice when we started create the process, think about the themes, the narratives, try to. So because I look to my pieces like storytellers, and this happened in the music also, and yes, we have the same ideas of philosophy. How can I say the black ideas? What's happening in the streets, in the museums, the institutions? How we can subvert these spaces, and yes.
And talking of subverted spaces, so Carla first found your work in a space next to an art fair in Rio. So if you want to talk about that, because I think that's a really interesting dialogue between artists who are maybe in a fair and what the kind of subculture or other communities, art communities in Rio are doing at the time when maybe more global fairs are on.
Sure, yeah. In this particular time, every year happen an art fair in Brazil. The Art Rio is the most famous fair in Rio, but sometimes the ticket is too much expensive. So for like a common people go and visit, stay in the space, like see the works. And me and other friends who create one art fair in the same days with this art fair. We invited some friends. They got exhibition inside this Art Rio, but put some work in Art Rio. We say like the joke with the rats, and was super fun. This movement we create because we try to create this space of art more democratic,
Yeah, more accessible.
In the park, in the garden, everyone can visit and stay comfortable to change ideas or which means the work. So it was super nice, and I put my work things in the fair, and 1 year after this happened, I stay with my galleries, present my work inside the fair, but continue this movement, participate in the other alternative space. So show.
And where is your studio based now? Like, how do you work? Is your studio based close to your home? Is it?
Yeah, it's in my room in Rio. It's close to the center, the neighborhood. If have many stories in this neighborhood, many artists living there, musicians too. Yeah, it's a neighborhood really close to the music and the
Yeah,
art.
yeah. I think it's important to kind of have the energy around you in the for
Yes,
the
have a some
process.
institution there like a Museu de Arte Moderna. Is the man is the really famous around the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice. And can you talk to us about any recent or upcoming projects? I know you were just in Lisbon for Arco Art Fair in Portugal, and then you were in Vienna, and then you've got plans to go somewhere else at the end of the year. So just your upcoming projects.
Sure. Yeah, this year in January we made the Spark Art Fair in Vienna. Was amazing. We made a great context there. Now in Lisbon, also in the Arco. I invited the to make a residence in Luanda in Africa in 2025, the next year. For this year, I have a residence in Middle East. Before that, no, after that, we have a 154 here in London in October. I made this solo show with the yeah paintings. Try to create a monumental paintings. Yeah, this is
Nice.
my idea.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And with the residencies, so you're in Rwanda sometime next year, 2025, and then it was Abu Dhabi at the end of this year as well, is it?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think yes. I think
Nice.
yes.
No, exciting.
Many things.
Yeah, many things, many things. And what would be a dream project for you if you were if money wasn't an object and you could create something? And is there a residency somewhere you would dream of going, or where do you see yourself in the next? That's one question. And then where do you see yourself in the next 5 or 10 years? Where would you like to see your work?
So
Big
now,
question.
yeah, I want to looking for my pieces, try to understand what he wants to me. Try to understand my process very well. How can uh, this changing for a universal piece? I really, this is my really dream to put in the world. Uh, I don't know, one piece we can communicate with everyone, and how this is speaking about all the time that pass and the continuum alive in the present, and for the 5-10 years, I don't know. My dream is like a MoMA.
Hey, that's a good one. Speak it
Participating
into
in the
existence.
biennials in Venice, in São
Yeah.
Paulo, stay in the institutions. Yeah, this is my real dream.
Yeah, nice. And then to Theresa, what's the art scene like? I mean, I know you lived in London for a couple of years, and now you're back in Germany. Whether you wanted to kind of talk about your artistic community, both in Germany and both here. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like a very different experience in a way. When I moved to London, it was very healing for me to like recognize, as I mentioned before, the tradition that exists within the Caribbean diaspora in London. I went to the Hayward Gallery for the Black Fantastic, and then saw like Hugh Locke's works in person for the first time, and then got to know all these works from like the previous generation, and noticed that the materials that I've been using have been used before, and then that it might not be like a coincidence that I intuitively picked these materials. And so like tapping into an existing dialogue and into a tradition was really exciting, and then gave a lot more depth for an understanding for myself and my work, and language. So it's a different experience in London in terms of there's no Caribbean diaspora in Germany.
Right.
So there's like isolated or like individual experiences rather than like a collective or community experience. And it's an interesting space as well, because I did get very good opportunities in London since 2021, and I had my first institutional solo show at the same time to my graduation in 21, and kind of felt like there is a lot of space to be filled up, and but there's a lot more of feeling that something's new, or like a lot more communication and understanding, and then trying to protect my practice because it kind of requires a certain sensitivity and maybe even not like an advanced knowledge a little bit. So very different experience, but it kind of balances each other out. Like coming back to London, I kind of feel like I am recharging and really enjoying to be part of my friend group, and really enjoying the collaborations in London. That's like why I go back and forth. Like ever since, and when I moved to London, I went back to Germany like once a month or every second month for shows, and now it's the other way around.
And then you have the other artist kind of who's based here, Nathaniel, who you collaborate with as well, which I think is a really nice network, or like, as you say, you have the Caribbean community, and then also your kind of artistic community as well.
Yeah, so we met, so Nathaniel and I met in the RCA. We studied together, and then started a friendship, like very close friendship, and started this collaboration in 2022 for our first performance, which was like a lecture performance. I was reading text and then wearing a costume, and his sound piece also included my voice and included an abstraction of the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. That's the performance I mentioned before. And it was in June. And then the June next year, 2023, would be the performance at Somerset House for the commission. And then June this year, which is today, there's going to be his sound performance at Studio Chapel in Deptford tonight for our collaborative show. So it's like an ongoing collaboration. And the next performance that we're going to make is in Berlin for the Dekoloniale, because I'm doing a residency in Berlin this year. It's called Dekoloniale. It's basically about processing German colonial history and like making interventions in these historical sites. And I'm going to make a site-specific fabric piece, and like I'm currently in my research phase, but I want to include performance and sound again, so we're going to collaborate for that and make a performance with dancers in that old church, which is called Nikolaikirche in Berlin. It's not a holy place or a church anymore. It's part of the City Museum now, Stadtmuseum Berlin, because of its heavy history. And so there's very much to unpack in Germany. Like there's almost no like work been done about like German colonial history. So there's like there's these different organizations that come together to kind of enable that residency, which this year is going to be the last year because the funding is going to be cut. Like it's pretty tense right now. The atmosphere, like politically, so it's like a very challenging thing, but we're onto something. So it feels like an
important one to do now.
Exactly. And the fact that we've, like Nathaniel and I met in London, he's German as well, and I feel like it's not a coincidence that we've met in London. Like this is a place where people come together from all over the world to like, you know, with the same mission, and then go back and forth, and that's, I feel like, the special thing about London.
And so we then kind of just touched on a couple of your kind of upcoming projects, so the residency and then your museum solo show, which opens next week. And thinking on from this, or after the residency, what's the dream project? I asked this question because Ellen Atsui, one of our artists here, when he first started at the gallery, he was like, one day I'll see my work at Tate. And last year we had his massive installation at the Tate Modern. So if you speak it into existence, it'll happen. So just in that sense of what would be a dream project for you, and where do you see your work in the next 5 or 10 years?
So, yeah, I mean, a Tate commission, obviously.
Would be nice.
I do like the context of biennales. It's like one of my visions as well. Venice Biennale. Best case scenario for projects is always like when you have a lot of freedom and then you have funding and you can include collaboration. So I'm just hoping to maintain my freedom and platform and gain visibility and kind of enjoy the process. Throughout the
And I guess more immediately, or after your residency in Berlin, is that for 3 months or is that just?
So that's a 6 months residency, but it's hybrid now for 3 months, like for the research phase and planning, and then I'm moving to Berlin in August for 3 months to produce and to prepare for the show and the festival and the events. So my museum is in Kunstmuseum Bochum, opening next Friday. It's called Chaosmos. It's about it's focusing on the idea of cosmology and chaos theory. All the walls have been painted black, and there's a lot of installation and a big series of these type of works that I've made for the show.
Nice.
And I have a few things in London coming up too, and I have a solo show in Berlin in September.
Busy.
Yes, it's a busy year, but it's fun.
Nice. So now I'm going to pass over to the audience. It'd be great if anyone has a question for two of these great artists. Thank you guys so much for all of bearing with all of my questions.
Eleri.
We have a floating mic, so go for it. Just Lena.
Hello. Okay, so this question is for you, Terry. You spoke on protecting your process because of the sensitivity of it when creating, especially because you show in so many different places in Europe. I would like to know how you expand on that and how you go about that, especially since there are motifs in your work that are so they're culturally sensitive and things, especially when you're bringing them into spaces like Europe. I know you spoke on the nails versus being in a place like the Caribbean and things. And I know sometimes that can be a little bit more difficult to do in making work like this that can be culturally sensitive sometimes in spaces because it's not seen as something always that can be prestigious or creative or an extension of yourself in the work. So I would like for you to expand on that if you can, on how you go about protecting that.
Yeah, thank you. So I feel like the first step also would be the decision of where you show, who you collaborate with, and your gut feeling when someone approaches me. I feel like very often I go after what exactly interests the other party in my practice. How is the conversation? Is it superficial, or is it going to another level that's more about the content and concepts? And my gut feeling, with the energy, do I feel appreciated and safe and respected in that context? And then the concept of the show as well. Does it work in dialogue with the other works, for instance? And then throughout the process, I really take care of the texts, who writes the text, how it's being written. In institutional shows, because there's people working to explain the works and make tours for an audience, I would like to explain to them my works rather than having someone else explain them, to make sure you really understand it properly, because sometimes I worry that it's in order to make it accessible or for people to understand it, especially when there's a big public coming in. Oftentimes institutions want you to break it down a little bit, make it more simple language-wise. I'm trying not to do I mean, language-wise, it's possible, but content-wise, I'm trying not to make it more simple. I'm trying to keep it as complex and nuanced as it is and as possible, and then trying to also expect something from the viewers. Like, if you don't know the references or if you don't really understand, like, it's nice to also expect from the visitors to put in some work. And then it's challenging and also might be a better experience for the visitors as well, if it's like challenging. So yeah, like really looking at the texts, everything that's been published, the imagery, graphic design, it even goes in the graphic design sometimes. Like yeah, sometimes I have uncomfortable conversations. It's like sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but and then in these situations, I'm trying to think it's not about like always being comfortable, like go in the comfortable, like fun way. We're all friends, but it's part of a bigger mission that it's something structural, like when a graphic design, for instance, really looks in a very like minimalist Western tradition that doesn't really work with the decolonial like philosophy that I use in my practice. It's something that we have to talk about, and then we have to change it. So it really depends on the situation. But so yeah, protecting my work and content in that term on like many different levels. But
yeah, it's a lot to think about. Like, yeah,
it's a very good question.
Yeah. Yeah, as an artist, obviously dealing with institutions or different galleries, there's a lot to think about in terms of, yeah, projecting how your work comes across and how it's interpreted. And yeah, it's a lot of trust, I think. Yeah, it's a lot of trust. Another question from the audience? Yeah?
So I have a question of Marx. In terms of what is your approach to reconnect with your heritage in a colonized context?
Thank you. So my contact he's coming more in the spiritual way, because I'm part of one religion of matriz Africana. So we try to connect with these ancestors about in rituals and singing musics and dancings, because I don't know exactly a part of my family from Brazil, and the grandmother of my father, I don't have the opportunity to meet her, So just not me, but many guys, many families is like this, pass through this process. It's like how can I say that? This is one process of decolonize some ideas, because yes, some families don't have like a father or mother directly, This is one way to connect this with this heritage, Yes.
Nice. And any other ones?
I want your words of advice. As spokesman for Emergent Energies, and as a completely new, fresh generation, and in spite of the state of our planet, in politically and climate change, etc., what keeps you going? What's your force, your élan vital? Or do you have any advice on how to generate it with others?
Oh, so sorry. I think the one.
So how do you, in kind of how the world is at the moment with all kind of the socio-political landscape, how do you stay energized to create your work?
Mm-hmm. So I try to stay think more about I don't know, this politic system in Brazil sometimes doesn't work very well. So in the last year I have a really bad present, so in the last 4 years, and I try to create spaces with health, with we can create conversations, spend more time with friends to, I don't know, create other ideas. I think it's for this way.
And same question, I guess.
Yes, same here. I would say for me it's very healing to create something physically and direct in the studio that's like so not like being on the screen, for instance. It's the opposite. And it feels like the source of like existence, like it just feels very natural to create and then gives a lot of energy back. And same with when you collaborate or like you're in the space and you have these like conversations and ideas, it gives you energy back from sometimes when you think about bigger structures and our time, and it can be draining, but then this emotion can be transformed to something productive, just like anger, like the female goddesses that are about female anger. It's anger is productive, and then to create something healing and poetic out of it, it enables optimism in a way, at least in the moment, and like for the lived experience, which is the only thing like that we can control is like ourselves first and the small circle. So if we can affect the small circle, that's already like a big thing.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then
it goes out.
Hopefully expands in like rings.
Yeah, nice.
To both artists, just hearing your talk and hearing what you're discussing is very interesting. But how important is the journey through education, research versus expression? So just from your personal experiences and your personal journeys of creating your works.
It's like two different modes in a way. So the research or reading or finding language helps me locate what I make, and then also helps me connect it to like other artists and histories and like traditions of things. But when I make something, it's a completely different feeling, like, and then there's so many options and choices in my practice because it's so many different medias. But and then in order to control it and in order to know what I make and make decisions, like proper clear decisions, I need the theoretical part, but it never is like happening simultaneously. So it's half intuitive, half like theoretical. For instance, when I plan a series of paintings, I would start with a few drawings and like rough compositions and titles, and the titles would come from chapter titles by Edouard Glissant, like Son of Consciousness, the other one in that room. And then I have like a framework and a theoretical framework, and then within the work itself, I can be completely free if I want to, and be very intuitive. Like setting a framework for me to be very free in that framework helps. So it's 50-50, like both is very needed.
And yeah, Matheus, like how do you balance the kind of more educational, theoretical parts of your work with your kind of artistic expression, if I'm interpreting your question correctly?
So the balance.
Yeah, so the balance of maybe more theory or kind of formal art practice.
I think more formal practice, like reading books, try to because I look too much the process when I studio, when I started the painting. I try to understand very well which with these colors try to ask me, and continue this movement until catch up these figures, try to create the compositions. I stay in very attention with with the materials, how they say, you know.
Yeah, so quite instinctual with
Mhm.
how you use the colours and things.
Yes.
I remember you telling me actually that you like to go down to the, or when you were staying close to the beach, that you'd go down
Oh,
to the
yes.
beach at night and see
Yeah,
the sea and the colours, but in the
try to
evening,
get
right?
these colors in the midnight, colors of the ocean, the clouds, the landscapes.
Nice.
Try to bring this to this
Yeah.
canvas.
And then bouncing off that actually, and your figures are kind of people that you would have seen, because it's interesting in your work that you can't quite tell the faces. They're kind of whether they're turned away or like slightly blurred. Whether, yeah, you could say something about that. Sorry, I'm expanding even more on your question now.
Yeah, because sometimes I use this to create one perspective, and these guys always not just stay in front, you know, and it's more has made these details. I don't know. I think I use this very well with these lights and shadows to create that perspective with the body, the face, and yeah, I don't. Yeah,
They kind of maybe they feel kind of familiar yet unfamiliar.
yes.
I think
In my
as well.
memory,
Yeah,
I made this.
yeah,
I think about these memories, these moments.
yeah.
Yes, sure.
Nice. Another question from the audience? Anyone else? Thank you. Thanks.
I think I'm particularly directing myself to Theresa. I think you try to break rules little by little, and then you create something new through that. So when Theresa came here, I'm artistic director here, she broke our rules straight away with this work that you see hanging behind me. We normally hang everything at the same level. And she said, no, it's got to be 40 centimeters off the ground, much lower than everything else. And actually it created a very wonderful environment. You feel much more close to the work, in particular since it's a body map. You feel as if you could walk in. So I think if you break rules little by little, you arrive at something new. So maybe at the end of your life, you would have broken so many rules. That would be a fantastic new creation at the end. Is there anything you'd like to say to that?
Thanks for saying that. I really like that thought. I think I can very much relate, yes. It also goes maybe even back to your question, like how do you protect your practice and thoughts? Because we all have to do that. Like really have to protect ourselves in the market as well, and then
and the vision of your work,
and
how
the
you
vision.
yeah.
So, and it's probably connected to the fact that I work with so many different medias. Like, prevents for me to be able to be put in a box. Like, I don't want to be put into one category of this is a person that does this and that. But it has to keep surprising me, and then kind of being as free as you can. So I like the idea of breaking rules.
Yeah,
So
nice.
thank you. Yeah.
And maybe one more question. Yes, please.
Thank you. This is a question, possibly a reflection for both of you. Thank you, first of all. And I really, I'm also in love with the Adinkra. So thank you very much for bringing a real life and fluidity and freedom to this interpretation of Sankofa. And I was really inspired when you were speaking about the cosmology and the non-linear aspect of expression and time. So that is Sankofa in a peanut, this idea of fluidity and present, past, future layered. So my question is something about, do you feel that there is a conversation between your pieces and between your work? Is there anything that, yes, your piece is saying to you and your pieces or piece are saying to you? How are they speaking, or how are you feeling that the work is landing in this conversation we're having today.
Nice, lovely question. Yeah, you guys meeting for the first time. So Theresa and Matheus didn't know each other before this show. So meeting for the first time, and then, yeah, how do you feel about your works in conversation with each other or responding?
I think we find each other in this timeline, in the past, the present, the future. I think this is all circle in this Sankofa, like we can use Sankofa like a verb, you know, and like we can make this every time, every day, and I think this is one thing link up the two pieces, the two process, and we are the same movement in diaspora, but I came from Brazil and you stay here in your movement, and yes, I think we found it in the same way, you know.
Exactly, yeah. And it's beautiful sometimes, like you look at a work and it like picks you up, because we deal with the same thoughts and references and visualize it in a very different way. But the way I can see the infinity and like the dark background and then water, like the ocean and the sky, or like there's these two poles, but then it becomes one in your work. Yeah, I immediately like understood, and then it's including mythologies, and immediately understood like how it makes a lot of sense, like that you curated it this way, and that we're like sitting here and in conversation today, and that's the lovely part. Yeah, as you said, like it feels like one movement or like one network, and it allows so much space for individuality, and yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously I can very much relate. I love your practice. So
Nice, thank you. Really lovely question. Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, and please enjoy the rest of the show and wander around. So we have Theresa's and Matheus's works, and then we have 4 other artists exhibiting in this group show as well. So enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.